Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and we've got a little bit of the old, a little bit of the new tonight. We've got veteran coach Riley Price from Greyhound Baseball. We've got one of the newest members of the athletic department, Shali, Sheridan. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Greyhound softball swept a doubleheader against Midwestern State last weekend and then unfortunately dropped a doubleheader to Lubbock Christian. Greyhound baseball lost their first two games against Sul Ross last weekend, won the last two. More will be said about them in a minute. And track and field had their first outdoor meet this past weekend at UTEP, and we had two provisional qualifiers already, both of them in the javelin. One, a young lady by the name of Vivica Addison, and Manny Chavez, a graduate of Portales High School, only a freshman, also through a provisional. Well, that has been your Eastern recap, so we'll clear this out and we'll bring in Riley Price right now. Welcome back to Sportslook. Privileged to bring back to the set of Sportslook the head coach of Greyhound Baseball, Riley Price. And Coach, if we've established one thing so far this season, Lone Star Conference is a tough conference top to bottom.
Oh, yeah, it always is.
Well, Coach, obviously you had a great squad last year. You had guys that just had like slow pitch softball batting average numbers, and there was going to be a little bit of an adjustment bringing in new kids.
Yeah, anytime you sign 27 new players, it takes you a while to get used to them, and for them to, kind of show what they have, and we have to see that. That's why we spend a lot of our time scrimmaging in the fall to kind of see, okay, what's it going to look like? Is this going to translate into spring? Where are weaknesses? Where are our strengths? So unfortunately, we're still trying to figure that out. And then, we also had the injury bug too. So it's kind of been a challenging year for sure.
You think you know something coming out of fall baseball, and sometimes that's what actually does translate into the first game in February. Sometimes you think you know something that's totally different. So is the injury situation the unknown, or was there something else you thought you knew that hasn't actually translated?
Um, you know, Probably on the pitching side was kind of something that has been a slower start than what I expected. We were so dominant in the fall on the mound. So that's been something that, I guess caught us a little off guard at the beginning. Now they're starting to really pick it back up, and the bats have kind of slowed down. But no, it's a combination of things, and, we're not here to make any excuses. But, yeah, the injury bug has been a nuisance for us this year. And then, just not timely hits and, not being able to minimize big innings. And that's, that's what it kind of comes down to a lot of the times.
Let's talk a little bit about the guys that did come back from last year's squad. Who were the kids that you thought you'd be able to count on that have indeed been the go-to players so far this spring?
Adrian Martin is always a solid bat. He's not had the greatest spring. He's starting to catch fire a little bit. He always does good at drawing walks. Cole Lancaster on the mound's been phenomenal for us. He's been kind of our steady guy. We know we're going to get a solid start every time out from him. Demetrius DiMatteo's also really stepped up this year, and he's actually improved from last year. So it's been good to see. But it's a brand new lineup. We kind of expected Cortese to be back as one of our top returning hitters, and unfortunately his injuries kind of set him back a little bit to where he hasn't been able to play this year either. So.
And who's been the most pleasant surprise? The kid that you didn't really see coming that has really stepped up and played an increasing role here this spring?
Yeah, that's a good question. One would be Riley Hall. Just we're so down in catchers that he hasn't caught since his freshman year of high school, and to catch 90 miles per hour plus and fill into that role has been huge for us. So he's done a good job. Another one I'd say Salomon Uveras has really stepped up this spring, and unfortunately he just got hurt too, but he's been on the squad for 2 years now, and as always, it kind of had a slow fall, and given the pinch hitting opportunity at Cameron, he had a big time home run for us, and then has been one of our hottest hitters ever since, and earned himself a starting spot at second base. But like I said, this weekend, unfortunately, he's kind of dealing with a little hand injury. So hopefully it gets better soon, and it's nothing serious.
Well, I'm intrigued by the story of your catcher. What position did he play for you?
He can play anywhere. He's really fast, really athletic kid. He's Riley Hall. He's been shortstop. We put him at second. He's played some third. We'll put him in the outfield, and we needed a catcher, and so we put him back there, and he was kind of the most natural uncatcher who caught, and we kind of had to play him. So he's doing good.
Yeah, usually, I mean, if you've got a right-handed throwing first baseman, that's the kind
Yeah.
of kid you think of. So you don't usually think of a shortstop
Right.
making the transition. Well, kudos to him.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, talk a little bit about the season. You and I were joking before we went on the air that if you just got to play the third and fourth game of the weekend series, you guys would be in first place, and that's just sometimes the way baseball is.
Yeah, yeah. It just comes down to giving up that big inning. Teams have done a good job scoring early and a lot. We need to minimize more. And then, we haven't been good with runners in scoring position this year. And a lot of times it comes down to that big hit, and we're not getting it. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But this year it's been a little struggle to really manufacture those runs. And strikeouts are a little too high as well. For a team that's not going to be probably up there in slugging percentage, and haven't been. We got to put the ball in play a lot more often. Our small ball's got to continue to get better. So it's just I think it's a combination of a lot of things. So hopefully we're able to really come together and finish out here strong in kind of the second half as strong as we can. So.
I would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd have to guess that probably the highlight of the season so far was going to UT Tyler, losing the first two games to the number 17 team in the nation, but winning the third and fourth games.
Yeah, it's no surprise. Our pitchers that were in those games pitched well. I'd say we even pitched it well Friday too. Just lacked the bats in that game. But the last two, we were able to score early, put the ball in play, stay up the middle, and put a lot of pressure on them first. And then that kind of changes the team who you're playing. Where kind of went into it, hey, nothing to lose here, and let's jump on them first. And so with that challenge to our guys, we did, and sure enough, we're able to get a few clutch runs in big situations, and then hold them on defense. And we had a couple good starts from our pitchers that we knew that's definitely possible and expect more from.
Coach, this is what we call a teachable moment because I know what you were referring to when you talked about the hitting approach to going up the middle. For people who are just kind of casual fans, what does that imply in terms of hitting the ball?
I could probably talk an hour on this, but really it's just keeping a simplified approach and letting that ball travel more, being able to use all parts of the field and kind of hitting where it's pitched. If we're up there guessing off speed, we're not going to be on time with the fastball. So we need to stay simple, trust our bat speed, and let it travel. In order to recognize off speed in later counts and be better two-strike hitters and put it in play, because we do have some speed that we're not fully taking advantage of yet. And with high strikeouts and a lot of speed, you're kind of wasting that speed. And so, we just need to be better at that. And we showed, our small ball abilities this weekend, even in the last game, being able to, get some bunts down for base hits and things like that, especially if the wind's blowing in or anything like that. But
So let's talk a little bit about when you do get a lead. Who has been your most effective relief pitcher so far this year?
Alex Sanderson stepped up recently quite a bit. He stepped twice in the Tyler series and helped secure a win there. And then this weekend as well, Demetrius DiMatteo as well, who could potentially move into a more of a starting role moving forward because he's done really good. There's been a couple guys, but Sanderson and DiMatteo have probably been some of the best two out of the pen. Jedediah Trudeau, we like him in that scenario as well. Hadn't had the success that he probably should, but we expect to also be able to bring him out as well. Zach Rachel being another one that we'll probably need moving forward.
So we talk about team leadership, and there are two types of leaders. There are leaders by example, and there are vocal leaders. Sometimes they're one and the same. But if you had to say who's your lead by example guy?
That's a good question. I'd say Cole Lancaster does a good job. He's both vocal and can lead by example. And, we've seen him do both all year, which has been really good. And he's, kept us in games, won us games, and has done a good job there. On the offensive side, Cole Curtis, he's had his struggles this year with a lot of injuries, so I don't think he's as vocal as he'd like to be. But he's definitely a guy that can, plays the game the right way, and has led off and set the tone in a lot of games with the bat. So.
One thing I was really curious about going into last year was the new turf that you have down, and I assumed that fielding percentages would go up. Fielding percentages, have they stayed up for you guys?
Yeah, so this year I think we're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as fielding percentage goes. Most of our errors are kind of silly errors. I'd say 15 of our 30 plus are probably from our pitchers. Just failed pickoff attempts, and just communication up the middle or on the corners. But it's been better. Still I think it could improve definitely. And unfortunately, when we do make errors, we pay for it. But we need to turn more double plays. We've had a few opportunities where we haven't turned as many double plays as we needed to as well. So.
Coach, you've got about a minute left, and we will point out that you're on the road this weekend, but you'll be back in town the next weekend. And if people come out, and we'll point out to people, you can't park on University Drive and get in that way. You park behind the right field fence and come in that way. If they come out to watch your squad, what are they going to see?
Well, hopefully they come for some wins and they see us play the game hard, and just compete. And we got a good match coming up with St. Mary's. It's going to be a tough one. They're top of the conference, so we'd really like to see everybody come out and give us support, and we'd be excited for that and really appreciative.
And we will point out the format is still a game on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and 6 o'clock start on Fridays.
Yes, more than likely.
Okay, all right, weather permitting and all things being equal.
Right.
Well, Coach, let's hope the Greyhounds catch fire, and I wish you the best of luck the rest of the way.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, Doc.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment, so we'll clear this out, and we're going to bring in Shali Sheridan right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and we bring to the set of Sportslook for the very first time Shali Sheridan. And Shali, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doc. I'm excited to be here.
First and foremost, what is your responsibility in the athletic department at Eastern?
I am the Assistant Athletic Director for Student Success, so I help with all of our student athletes, around 400 of them, for all of their academic stuff, life stuff. I'm a resource with faculty and across with our campus partners, and helping them stay eligible, helping them succeed in the classroom and get graduated and move on from here.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Where are you from originally, and what was the process that got you here to Eastern?
Absolutely. So I was actually born in Socorro, and a family from New Mexico, but I grew up in South Dakota, and then went to North Dakota for college, Tennessee for grad school, and ended up here.
And from what I've learned about you, your dad actually went to high school in Albuquerque.
Correct, yes. My dad went to Rio Grande High School in Albuquerque. Still have family up there now. Just got back from there yesterday, actually.
And so what had him in Socorro?
My dad is like a cattle buyer, works in livestock and ag. So my parents were living at the sale barn, I believe, in Socorro at the time, but they had bounced around between Las Lunas, Socorro. My mom had been an English teacher in Magdalena, and so kind of bounced around a little bit, but normally just in the livestock department.
Well, it's interesting, Socorro, New Mexico, not the biggest town in New Mexico, but from what you were telling me, a little bit bigger than the town in South Dakota you lived in.
Yes. The town that I grew up in South Dakota is, I believe the sign says somewhere around 400 people, but I graduated with about 10 people in high school.
So if Floyd or Dora or Elida are schools in the local area, that's kind of that size. Well, talk a little bit about your association with athletics growing up.
Sports were really big growing up, especially, I mean, as this area knows very well, like when you're in a rural area, you're doing whatever you can all the time to stay busy and stay active. So did a little bit of everything growing up. I rodeoed, played basketball, played some volleyball, ran some track, ran some cross country, a little bit of everything. Stuck with basketball, played in college. I went to junior college, and then I went to an NAIA school, and just kind of after it being in your life for about 20 years, it's hard to get rid of. So decided to stick with it.
I was just going to ask you that question. At what point in your collegiate experience did you decide that this was the direction you wanted to go?
I think I had seen the area of emphasis really and kind of piqued my interest when I was in junior college, probably like a sophomore, just with being around people that I couldn't believe were at a junior college. And it was just because of eligibility stuff, academic issues, whatever, and just like a lack of guidance and a lack of information being given to a lot of people. So I wanted to be able to kind of go into that area and help out with that. School was never really something that I thought of doing forever. I definitely wasn't the type of person that wanted to be in study hall for the rest of my life, but here I am.
Yeah. Interesting how things work out. You went to graduate school, you got a degree in sports management, if I remember correctly.
Sport administration.
Sport administration. Yeah. And you were lucky to be in an area where there were a lot of opportunities to do internships.
Yeah, I went to the Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, so lots going on around there as far as like NHL with the Preds. We had, even last summer was when they started doing professional, like women's basketball. They had some leagues, the NFL, so much Division I sports of every kind. I was really lucky to work at Vanderbilt with the football team in the Ingram Center for Student Success. So that's really where I got my foot in the door as far as the academic side goes. But yeah, just so many opportunities. I was able to work for the Titans for a while and just make a lot of connections and get a lot of experience across so many different areas.
Talk a little bit about the process of actually getting hired at Eastern. From what you've told me already in a previous interview on radio, there was an initial interview at Eastern, and it actually turned out that wasn't the time that you accepted, but there was another opportunity.
Yeah, it was kind of a roundabout way of getting here. When I was just finishing grad school, I had applied for this position, came out, visited, interviewed, talked to a ton of people, and when I was talking to the interim AD at the time, it just didn't seem like the right time for me without having an AD hired yet or anything. So I did another year of living in Nashville and working and doing that and kind of trying to find my footing there, and then never really stopped thinking about it and kind of what could have been, and position came available almost exactly a year later. And so I reached back out to the contacts that I still had and put in my application. By then, obviously, Kevin Feit had been hired, so he just gave me a call and was asking. It doesn't say on my resume, obviously, that I'm from the middle of nowhere. So one of the things he asked me was like, Portales is in Nashville, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm used to it. Don't worry, it's okay. So yeah, after I got off the phone with him, then got a flight and everything out here. Interviewed on campus with a lot of the same people, but some different from the time before, and that was funny because they remembered me. But I really liked the community and the idea of being so invested in everything and having your hand in a lot of different things, being able to learn a lot really quickly. And I like the small school, and I like the rural. Reminds me of home a little bit, so it was just kind of the perfect storm for me.
And the weather a lot better down here.
Yes, it's so much warmer.
Spoken by a former Midwesterner,
Yes.
I totally get that. So Shali, obviously you had been to Eastern, and you kind of might have thought you knew what this job would be about. What's been the most surprising thing about the job?
I think the big reason, like one of the biggest reasons that I took this job was, like I said, the way that you have so many opportunities to learn a lot really quickly, have your hand in a lot of things. I would say the most surprising thing is really how much Eastern has to offer that people maybe don't know about or even think about. This facility being a perfect example. Like there's so much here that we have to offer students, and I'm really excited about how we can kind of leverage that and make sure that our student athletes, for even especially, know of the resources that they have and are able to utilize those to succeed.
I'd also like, and it's a little bit self-serving because I've been here for 31 years, but I think you probably also had to be impressed, particularly during the basketball season, with how much buy-in there is by the community with Eastern.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about like a small community and a smaller school is there is a very much a community feel. People are so invested in the student athletes and their success and just them in life. They all have an awesome support system, and obviously I love seeing them succeed and being able to see them every day and doing all of that, but it's really cool to see how the community kind of rallies around them. And the conference championship game was a perfect example for that. The men's basketball team, there was so many people there. I had made the comment at one point, like, is there anyone in Portales today? Because everyone's here in Frisco. So
You obviously, to be an effective advisor to our student athletes, you have to know about our programs. What was the program here at Eastern that you were like, wow, that university, I wouldn't expect them to offer that degree?
I guess honestly, probably this one, just because of all of the everything that you need to do this and do it as well as you do or as they do here. So that's a really big one for me. Like obviously, I expected the ag department and like the physical education, all that stuff goes together well. But this department for sure, the counseling department is like those master's programs and stuff. Those are big. It's just a really well-rounded school in general, and there's so many opportunities that can come from that here.
We would advise people to come on and watch Greyhound baseball, to watch Greyhound softball. We've got really nice facilities. And we will point out this is the last year you can go watch them for free because we're going to start charging next year. So it's a fun way to go and spend some time outdoors and root on a couple of teams.
Absolutely, and I think there's some things in the works for our next homecoming or next home games next week as far as like different activities and events surrounding those. So that'll be exciting and definitely something that you can bring your family, bring everybody out to, and enjoy the weather. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But
well, we call that in the entertainment business a teaser, so I like that. So, Shali, talk a little bit. We've got about a minute left. So, what's the one thing by the time you end your career at Eastern? What's the one thing that you hope you've accomplished?
Make a difference in the lives of my student athletes as far as their education and their springboard away from here. I think sometimes it's easy to get wrapped up in your success on the floor, on the field, wherever. But I take a lot of pride in making sure that our student athletes know that there's somebody who cares about them outside of their eligibility and what they're doing on the field or on the court. So just making sure that they have somebody that they can call and talk to if they need to, but also holding people accountable. I firmly believe that they need to leave here better than they got here. So just helping be a transformative piece in that.
Well, Shali, I've actually had the opportunity to work with you because my daytime job is a professor. So you are very good at what you do, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Doc.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview portion of Sportslook. So we'll clear this out, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. Who's been the biggest surprise of the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament so far? Some of you out there might say the University of Iowa. They were a 9 seed. They beat the 8 seed Clemson, And then, under a first-year head coach, they knocked off the defending national champs, Florida. But I would say probably Texas. Texas had to play a play-in game, a first four as we call it. Then they had to beat BYU, and then they knocked off Gonzaga. And a little bit of redemption. Sean Miller, their head coach, had been the head coach of Arizona, had kind of left under a cloud, but now he's getting a chance at the big time again, and the Longhorns making the most of it. Well, that is going to wrap up in overtime, and that will wrap up an episode of Sportslook. I'd like to thank my guests, Raleigh Price and Shali Sheridan. Once again, Ms. Jasmine, my floor director. So for all of those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.